Hi, I'm delighted to be dealing with one of our podcasts today, the Property Angel, and today we are pleased to have Tom Connor from Custom Build Homes here today. Tom, great to see you.
Hi there, good to see you too.
Tom, would you like to tell everyone what your position is and what you do at Custom Build Homes? Because obviously you're one of our trusted property partners at the Property Angel that we are more than happy to work with. So great to hear your insights.
Hi, so good afternoon. I'm Tom Connor. I'm director and co-founder at Custom Build Homes. We are a specialist development company that work in partnership with landowners, local authorities, to deliver housing schemes where people get to design and create their own homes, and then we support them to do that.
So yeah, you're helping consumers build their own home, guiding them from all the way through the process?
Yeah, start to finish. So identification of land. Sorry, my phone just went off there. Identification of land, design, architecture, planning, finance, construction, project management, the sale of their own home through yourselves. So yeah, the full shooting match. Not every buyer needs support with everything, but what we've recognized in our own growth plans is trying to look at the value proposition for the buyer. They want to have the benefits of a self-built home or an individually designed home, but they don't necessarily want some of the hassles that come with taking on too much responsibility themselves. So the ability to rely on professionals, whether it's our own in-house professionals or others that we bring to the table, it helps accelerate build out. Not only, and that's important not just for the buyer, their own house, but as a company, we want to influence the acceleration of build out full stop across the country. And we think that custom housing can play a big part in helping to reduce the deficit of housing that we have across the country.
And to anyone watching, to anyone listening, is it a stressful thing to want, well, maybe not to want, but to actually build your own home? Is it not just easier to go to one of these off-the-shelf builders that we see in every town at the moment? What are the benefits really for everyone?
Well, I think, if you look at some of the data, it's been pretty consistent over the last 5 years. Around 58% of would-be new build buyers would consider building or creating their own home. 5 million people will research building their own home this year, whether it's making an inquiry to an estate agent, whether it's subscribing to magazines, whether it's speaking to a local builder, speaking to an architect, finding out if they can design and build in their garden. They'll make some sort of inquiry. That's 5 million people. But in reality, only 15,000 houses in the UK each year are individually designed for someone who's going to go and live in it. That means that less than 7% of our housing supply each year is individually procured for self or custom build purposes. So there has to be something between this huge pent up demand to very small supply. And when you dig into that supply, you look at availability of labor, professional skills, mortgage finance, insurance, and there's a lot of barriers to entry for the everyday home buyer, the people who are not on the Grand Design's affordability scale, people who need levels of affordability to achieve home ownership. So there is this pent up demand from people, but there isn't a process within industry yet scale to satisfy that demand. So we're trying to do it. Others are trying to do it, but it's not easy though.
And so where do people start? Because I mean, you talked about having to sell the property. A lot of people will have to sell their existing property to free up cash to get involved and start on this process. Just talk us through a little bit about how it works from someone having their first thought of, hey, you know what, this would be a great thing to do. And for me, that's my dream, is to build that bespoke house just completely tailored to every single little piece of me, my lifestyle, my family's lifestyle, and cater. So how do people do it? How do they do it from that first thought right through?
So we advise people, if they're thinking about doing this, is to try and create a scope for them. What does their project look like? Is it a detached house? Would they like to do a terrace townhouse or an apartment? Do they want to build the entire house? Do they want to have an input into the layout or just the fittings of their house? To what extent do they need to design it to feel like it's theirs and to make sure that it works for them? And there is different, there's a scale of involvement and a scale of design choice. A lot of people will think, in order to get a house that's individual to me, I have to design every aspect of it. And in reality, you don't. You can say that you want to customize a house, for example, and there are developers and enablers across the country that will make that happen. So first of all, understand to what degree do you want to input into this design and into this construction, and then try to get as much advice as possible as to how you do that. And we try to split it up into location. Where are you going to do this? You're going to need to access some land. So different ways that you can find land. You can find land from estate agents. You can find it on Rightmove. You can look at Google Maps and try to identify where there might be some infill sites or a piece of land at the bottom of someone's garden that could be created into a plot. You then need to try and get some advice from professionals at that point to make a decision whether the piece of land that you've identified is actually worth going ahead with. And that really relates to, is it feasible to get a planning permission on there? And if so, what's the associated risk to doing so?
And so, can you help people with that as well as introducing them to architects?
Yeah, so we work with a number of architects. For people who want to go down that full design input construction, I would always advise getting an architect on board as soon as possible. Most architects can do not only the design of the house, but they can do the planning, and they can also do the construction package. So it helps you get an idea of cost. And understanding cost and understanding your budget is absolutely paramount to anyone considering going down this route, because there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that will incur cost seeking advice for a project that ultimately they won't be able to afford because they haven't done due diligence on the ground type. If it's got a certain type of clay and certain types of soil, you need different types of foundations that all have different costs. An architect will be able to tell you very quickly whether this plot is suitable for planning, is it likely to be permitted for a house, but also, is there anything wrong with that land? Is it a flood risk? Is it sloping too much that you would need to design a retaining wall? All of that comes with additional cost, and knowing that up front to try and get a ballpark figure is really important, because you can then take that ballpark figure and go to a mortgage advisor if you need a mortgage. If you've got bundles of cash, fine, but most people don't. And if they do have cash, it's usually wrapped up in their existing property. So they need to go to a mortgage advisor. We would suggest going to a company called BuildStore. They do the vast majority of custom and self-build mortgages. But what they'll do is do an affordability. They'll talk you through the process of how the finance journey will work. And it is different to buying a new build or an existing property. And make sure that, do you have the funds that you can utilize at the various stages, or can you access a mortgage product that allows you to draw those funds down when you need them, and make them aware that certain things are covered in a mortgage, but certain things aren't. So materials are covered, the land is covered, but your professional fees aren't. And you'll have a lot higher professional fees associated to building a house than you would buying a house. So
And I think that brings us on to, because you talk about higher cost there, but one of the benefits of building your own home is there are actually cost savings, and can be cost savings. That's what I seem to read on your site. Is that correct?
Yeah, because you're playing the role of the developer. So there's no developer profit in your project from the point in which you buy something. So if you buy a plot of land, and then for £100,000, that might be the value of that plot. But when you put foundations on, the shell on, the materials on the outside, the internal walls, the plumbing, the electrical, the kitchens, the bathrooms, the floorings, the lighting, all of those individual purchases are totted up by a developer and sold to you as a new build buyer for a profit, with a profit margin attached to it. When you're a self-builder or a custom builder, there is no development profit. So you're buying the kitchen at the same price as the builder would be, but you're not paying the extra 20% or 10% that the builder would put on if you were buying it as a completed property. So you add all of that up, and at the end, most of our clients, and I would say most across the country, are probably save an average of around 20% on when compared to the price that your house, once completed, would achieve on the resale market.
And also, if someone was buying a £300,000 house as a new build, they're going to have stamp duty, or a £400,000. They're going to have stamp duty on that purchase price. You're not going to have that if you're buying the land and then building on that.
Yeah, you only pay the stamp duty on the price that you pay for the land. So if it's below the threshold, then you'll pay zero. If it's above the threshold, you'll only pay the percentage on the amount above. So it's big savings if you're in the home counties or down in the southwest. It's the price of a good kitchen.
Absolutely. So, I mean that's just one of the great advantages of building and presumably building what you want, but also building a future proof for your future lifestyle as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many reasons why people will want an individual property. There's so many benefits to their lifestyle. People may want to future-proof their lives later on. So they may want to think, okay, in retirement, my income is going to dry because I'm no longer working. But if I'm in this 5-bedroom leaky house that I've been paying for through working full time, those leaks are still going to be there. Those utility bills are still going to be there. The council tax is still going to be there. So there's all these bills associated to living in a larger property. Once the kids might fly the nest, go off to uni, get their own places, there's a real opportunity for people to downsize. Or I would say, you mentioned the term right sizing. I've not actually heard that term, but I like it, Kev. And part of that process is actually looking at how are you going to live your life. So, what are you going to do when you come home from a walk with the dogs? Are you going to need a wet room where you can, wash the dog down and, put your dirty clothes straight into the laundry? That's just a tiny example. Or, are you retired but your partner isn't, and they're still waking up at 6:30 in the morning? So do you want a bedroom and then a walk-in wardrobe and the ensuite? And then once you've finished having a shower in the morning, you can access the rest of the house directly from the wardrobe. So you don't have to wake the other person up twice. Just little things like that when you add them up, can make a real positive impact to your life. The other benefits that people, particularly people who are downsizing to future-proof their house in terms of the money that goes into it, is you can build to a much higher quality by building something yourself, because you're not paying the profit, so you've got more money to play with. But volume house builders won't build to a quality much beyond what building regs make them. Because they're not going to put cost in, because actually that additional spec is not always realized as additional value. So on a spreadsheet, it's just throwing money away. But if you're in retirement, you're thinking, if I can build a really thermally efficient house, I can maybe build to passive house standard. You might have heard of that. Then you can heat your house with a candle. So you don't have they don't have the £60 a month on heating bills. You can choose not to have a gas boiler. You can have a mechanical heat ventilation system that keeps it cool in the summer and warm in the winter, just by reheating air that is cold. So it's there's so many sort of savings ongoing once your property is completed that isn't actually in that first 20% that you might save. That being said, you need the money to be able to build to a higher quality. So it's not really an option for the younger custom and self builder, but certainly for the retirees, it's something that a lot of people should consider.
Because there's obviously a timescale associated with getting the land, paying for the land, building the house. Typically, can you give us an insight into how long that process might take?
If you're going to be doing it yourself, I would say 12 to 14 months. You should really be able to achieve practical completion within a year. But practical completion doesn't mean gardens, driveways, gates, that kind of thing. But to have your whole house completed, I would say 12 to 14 months. It can go a lot longer, and unfortunately, people do that because it's a bit of a labour of love. And sometimes, if you feel like it's coming to the end, then you don't want to stop. But I would advise people to have a real structured program to building their house, and where they aren't comfortable doing certain things, employ professionals to do it, because it's not worth getting it wrong. And anyone in construction will tell you it's a lot more expensive to fix something than it is to do it right the first time around. So,
and it sounds fun. It sounds hard work, but I remember coming down to York to a presentation we did with yourselves, and one of your buyers had just finished doing a custom build about 2-3 years ago before, and here they were now coming into this new development, wanting to do it again, and they were late 60s, early 70s, but they had so much fun the first time that they were addicted to doing and wanted to do this again.
Yeah, repeat offenders. Custom and self builders. Couple of reasons, that couple that you were talking about, they were still working when they did their first one. They did the previous one. I don't actually know if that was their first or their second, but they were still working. So they had a different set of requirements in their life than they do now. They're now both retired. Their house was considerably bigger than the one that they want to build now, so they are looking to downsize. But also, if you're consistently making 20% profit and then you live in it for 10 years and you make another 5 on its value, if you're coming out of, you sell the house and you make 25% on what you paid for it to be created, and you do that 3 times. If you want a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs that on your third custom property, then you're going to be mortgage free. If not, you're going to be pretty close to. So again, it's like they've taken a long-term view of their housing choice and said, if we do this, we'll not only have amazing places to live, places that work for us in the at the time of our lives, when things to work, but also we'll have additional income because we won't be paying a mortgage every month, and we'll be on cruises and holidays and beaches and enjoying our retirement. So it just shows you how much value goes to big developers.
Yeah.
Because if more people were doing this, say a third of all houses were custom built, so the level of profit to the developer was reduced to maybe the sale of land or shelled apartments or that kind of thing. People would be mortgage free earlier, by maybe 10 years, decade earlier. So think of the lifestyle improvements that would be available to across our country as a whole. Think of how much personal wealth we would have compared to paying it every month. So there's a huge opportunity for people. But I stress that the opportunity is there, but industry needs to follow it up with a credible, scalable support process.
Yeah.
Otherwise, too many people are not going to have a positive experience.
I think Legal in General have a report that says that there's about £1 trillion worth of wealth tied up in houses that people could downsize from. And there's about 3.4 million people estimated to be looking to downsize by 2021. This is what I think is one of the reasons that people don't do is there's a lack of suitable properties out there for them to go to in the traditional market, what's for sale. This offers them the opportunity to get out of that bigger house and custom build somewhere that's just exactly right size for them. It then allows that bigger house to be available for the upsizers to move into and gets the whole market going. This is a great way. I know the government is supporting it. It's brought in initiatives, and I think you're going to talk about the right to build register as well.
Yeah. So just touching on your first point, there's probably two factors to it. The people who are in the bigger property, and Legal in General have stated there's £1 trillion worth of value trapped in them. And that's what it is. It's trapped because it's not being realised by those who live in it because they're not selling it. And it can't be realised by the people buying it because it's not available to buy. I think it's the reason that people are trapped in these larger properties is the suitability of 2-bedroom houses, apartments and whatnot. They're very much focused on first-time buyers. Therefore, they're focused on people who are working full-time. They're in areas where people are using their houses more as shelter rather than living in them. If you're retiring, you're going to spend an awful lot more time in the property. So the smaller properties that are being built, particularly those that are being built as affordable homes or shared ownership opportunities, they're not suitable for retirees. So they're not going to attract them. The second thing is and I don't really think that will change because there's such a need for first-time home ownership opportunities in key locations. The old thing of, look at the crisis we have at the moment. How many NHS staff are living in the ideal location to the hospital? Probably not many. Particularly if they're working in St Thomas's in the city centre of London. They're having to keep tubes open and whatnot to get them there because there isn't an opportunity for people to purchase where they need to. So those key locations need to be looked at. The other thing, which kind of leads on to the right to build, is if you want people to retire into a custom designed property, there has to be more availability of land. There has to be more land set aside for the provision of plots rather than houses. And we need strategic landowners like Homes England to back the provision of service plots rather than the delivery of homes. And they are actually doing that now. New government policy is essentially asking them to support the creation of mass market plots, which will be made available for people to purchase one of the plots and then create a house within an agreed set of parameters. And one of the main markets for those land allocations will be, the downsizing market, like you say, to free up those bigger properties. So if people want the right to build, I think that's what you want. In England, you now have the legal. You have a right to build a house in the same way as you have the right to buy a house, and the way that it's implemented is local authorities must maintain a register of people and anyone who's over the age of 18 living in the UK, so people in Scotland can still exercise their right to build, but they can only actually build it in England. They have to keep a register of people, and then they have to satisfy that register in whole by permitting new plots that will be sold to people wanting to build their house within a rolling 3-year cycle. So if this year, 2020, 100 people in East Staffordshire were to exercise their right to build, then by 2023, by this time in 2023, they must have permitted 100 planning permissions which state the permission is only for the sale of a serviced building plot.
Okay.
So it's a really good piece of legislation. It's really up for the public now to exercise that demand, understand the benefits of doing so, and also for industry to rally around and say, okay, housing is changing to meet a new demand, and bring forward support mechanisms to make the delivery of the house supported enough that people will follow through with an opportunity once it comes to market. One of the biggest concerns we have is the benefits of having an individually designed house are so great, but at the end of the day, even people like myself, yourself, we work in property. We like to think we understand it, but if we were just faced with a piece of grass and a shovel and said, "On you go, then build a house in 18 months," it would be a nervous prospect. It would be a daunting thing, and that will put people off and in great numbers. So we need to try and make it right.
Yeah, you're right. But I think what I like about your team and your model is that they genuinely care about the consumer. They genuinely care about the person who's sitting or standing there looking at this piece of grass and shovel and go, you know what? Put the shovel down. We will take you through that journey of how to realize that dream in that bubble above someone's head. And presumably that's not a mistake, Tom. You've hired these people based on a number of things. Is that culture? Is it values? It's not a mistake, I imagine.
I don't think it was a mistake. Might have got lucky. We tried to look at the opportunity, which was, we have this legislation. If people provide demand, and they have done, we're currently at 50,000 as of November last year. So within 3 years, there has to be 50,000 service plots available to buy on the market. That's a large number of homes. And what we wanted was to try and create a proposition that enabled people to have their house delivered or to deliver their house themselves, without it being that scary process. So we work with architects that we've vetted, that we know will do a good job, that put the customer at the heart of the process. We work with mortgage advisors who are experts in giving advice. We work with various contractors, so whether that's local builders or design and build companies, to make sure that they are pricing their houses or their materials, their time, their labour appropriately. And we try to basically create the development team around this individual so that they can input into the areas of their home that they feel comfortable in doing so. They can have fun. They can go out shopping for kitchens and bathrooms and flooring and lighting and whatnot. But they have that peace of mind that there is a professional framework around the delivery of their house, and it will happen on time, it will happen on budget, and they can plan their lives around that. The thing people forget is, particularly developers, people are maybe selling a house. People might have to move into rented accommodation. Kids might have to move schools. They can't just put their lives on hold. And when they're asked to, because the framework around the support, fell by the wayside, then, their reviews aren't good and they're not going to recommend it to the next person.
Yeah.
And we need them to. So
And I think that's why I was delighted to get involved with yourselves, because there is this timeline where people speak to yourselves, and then weeks, few months ahead, they have to buy the plot. And if they don't have the money available to buy that plot, if it's 12 weeks ahead or whatever it is, we're there to say to them, this is the time you now need to think about selling. Here's the average days it takes to sell within your area. Here's a list of estate agents that we would recommend within your area. And here's all the times that you need to be thinking, you need to be relying on us and also the professional team you talk about as well. And it just gives this overarching support to the homeowner from that first thought of building to the first night in that new custom build home as well. And that is, as you say, the reviews are absolutely essential for us, for you, for everyone, because what we want at the end of this is a very happy customer who has and goes and recommends you and us and all the other advisors to others as well, and tell them just how seamless, how stress-free this whole process was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know that someone has a good experience, they tell 3 people. If they have a bad experience, they tell 30.
Yeah.
So, we want to give people the best possible service we can.
And where are you currently working? What sites are you working on at the moment? You've got some in England and Scotland?
Yeah, we work across the country. We're predominantly in England, just because of the right to build legislation. Is where the planning permissions are really coming through the system. But we do have a couple of sites in Scotland. We've got one in the final stages of the planning process just outside Edinburgh. And in fact, with 2 just outside Edinburgh, one near the hospital, near Miller Hill, and we have another one just across from Dalmahoy Golf Club. Again, it's in planning. Different price points. The one near the hospital, very much sort of mid-range prices. It's a customizable housing model, so you don't have the opportunity to design the outside, but you have the opportunity to create the internal layout, fittings, and then it will be built to completion for you. So we wanted to look at the buyer type for that one, and we thought it's likely to be people commuting into the city centre, probably upsizers from flats in the centre of town, and probably people that don't have the £10,000 to put on design fees. So we want to try and open custom housing up to people that don't have that upfront cash available but still want to input into design. So that customizable model, I think, is quite exciting. The one out near Dalmahoy is as you maybe more traditional self-build, where we prepare the plots and then people purchase the plot and work with their own professionals, their own design team, to get the house created within a period of time. And we'll appoint one of our coordinators to make sure that any questions that arise from trying to appoint people to help them, or the relationship between them and professionals, we try to act as a facilitator all the way through, so that things go smoothly and houses get built on time and they have a good time. And
I think that you touched on it briefly earlier on. We are recording this in the middle of the coronavirus crisis. Hopefully people are still watching this, and the coronavirus crisis is just a distant memory. But it's extremely important that the amount of time that people are having to spend in their homes, that the homes that they're spending time in are where they enjoy spending time, rather so that this is a positive experience rather than a negative experience. I know you touched on that in one of a podcasts you did at Custom Build Homes as well. Have you heard or had feedback? I mean, presumably testimonials on your website pay homage to what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that the state of housing and the suitability of housing has never been under greater scrutiny than it is right now. People are having to actually live in a house, not just eat and sleep there and then go out. I think from my own personal circumstances, I've realized that I leave my house to do everything all the time. you know. And if houses were designed to be lived in, so if they were designed to be able to work efficiently from, if they were designed to have kids at home for longer without interrupting that work, or being able to play and exercise in, then we wouldn't have this sort of view of housing where people spend 7 hours a night in it and then they leave in the morning, Monday to Friday. And that lack of lifestyle in our properties has led to the acceptance that we knock up 200,000 almost identical houses and we just buy them, even though my life is not the same as yours and my life isn't the same as my neighbors. Yet why are we're having to live in houses that fit, it's a one size fits all approach. And we don't have that in any other aspect of our life. We can customize our iPhone, we can customize our car, we can customize our trainers, but we can't customize our house. It just seems madness.
Yeah. I think we're going to come out of this in a completely different landscape. People are going to think about things a whole lot differently, and the product that the value proposition that you're offering is, I think, going to find even greater favor with people going forward as well. And how do people get in touch with yourselves then?
So they can, two ways really. They can go to custombuildhomes.co.uk and hit the subscribe to our mailing list. That'll automate an email to them asking a few more questions about where they want to live, what type of house they want, and some of their basic requirements. Our sales team can get in touch with them if we feel that something is available that would suit their needs. But one thing that's key that we do is we ask all people who subscribe to us to tell us about how they want to live their lives. And then we use that data to influence master plans, plot sizes, design choice. So our kind of long-term vision is to be doing volume development, volume house building, but for the customers to be telling us how the place comes together.
Yeah.
Rather than so flip it all on its head, and we are designing, building, creating places for people who we already know, who are already bought into that property and that place and that community. And I think that coming out of the back of COVID-19 and people realizing that they do live in a community, they're seeing people outside their doors clapping the NHS, and rightly so, but they probably don't know their names, or the dog's name, or have ever been in their houses. Our developments, albeit they're quite small at the moment, we have 15 people in South Norfolk that know everything about each other and help each other to build their house and create their house. And now that they're in it, they're, babysitting their kids, or, I'm sure the younger lot are going out shopping for the older lot on the scheme and things like that. So, trying to bring a little bit of community back to places would be a good thing.
Yeah. Again, I think going back to that presentation we did in York, I was pleasantly surprised by the number of people in the room who were all going to buy, and they all started to get to meet each other from that day one. And okay, their houses might not be up for 12 months or 14 months, but they started to know each other, they got introduced, and they created that community spirit from right at the outset. Listen, Tom, I think it has been extremely valuable for for everyone watching, for everyone listening, and I can only but thank you for giving up your time, for explaining it, and I'm hoping to everyone out there it's been extremely useful. If you've ever dreamt about building your own home, it is a reality, it's a possibility, and Tom and Custom Build Homes and their team can make that a reality as well. So, we look forward to speaking next time on downsizing, upsizing, and everything else. So at the moment, as we're in coronavirus crisis country, stay safe, and we'll see you the next time. Thanks so much indeed, guys.